Hi, everyone. If you're just starting to join us, welcome. We're going to get started in a couple of minutes. This is the American Marketing Association, New Orleans chapter. We will wait a few more minutes and then we will get started. Thank you for being here today. All right. I know I said a couple of minutes, but it's actually 12:02. Welcome, welcome. All right, I'm sure people are going to continue to join, but our broadcast has started, so I want to go ahead and dive in. Welcome to the latest hurricane and to this month's American Marketing Association New Orleans chapter webinar on Let's Get Real, Building Virtual Relationships so you can sell more. I'm so excited about today's webinar because it's very practical, and Tom is going to give us a lot of advice on things that we can immediately start using in our professional lives. And we are going to introduce him shortly, but I would like to start by introducing myself. My name is Mariska Morse. I am the president of the New Orleans chapter of the American Marketing Association. I'm very honored to be in this role. And again, if you're just starting to join us, the usual administrative advice here, please use the Q&A box. I have a couple of colleagues who are online with me today who can answer your questions. You are automatically muted. And this session will be recorded and sent out to our members. So again, welcome. And we are just excited that you've taken the time amidst probably the frenetic energy that's happening right now with the latest hurricane that is joining our area today. It's been an exciting season of weather that sort of happens, doesn't happen. It's always hard to know. But if you're hunkering down, this is the best place you can be, is here with us online, learning about how to sell greatly. I put up the screen of our board of directors. I am thrilled to be on a team this year with really talented individuals who are all working super hard to give you a great year of programming and content that will help you professionally, personally, and most importantly, to just connect. So a huge thanks to this fantastic team for everything they do on a daily basis, and a particular shout out to Anna Ladon, our programming chair, who is constantly working tirelessly to secure excellent speakers and come up with fantastic topics to bring to our membership. So thank you, Anna. What's important for me to quickly share with you today is our objectives as a board this year. When we started planning back in August, we wanted to be sure that we were not just bringing you some of the typical, we want to network and learn, but we really want as an association to be that go-to marketing resource for small business in particular. We know with COVID-19 that our business community is having a tough time. And so it's important for our association to be there to help these small businesses, to help nonprofits, to help individuals that may not have a job right now, to provide them with connections, provide them with skills and opportunities to continue growing in their career during these unprecedented times. We also want to be sure that you learn about the talent that is across New Orleans. It's a very talented community, and we want to be introducing you to those leaders. Diversity is important to us. We want to be sure that our membership is full of people that maybe you wouldn't normally meet. Make sure your circle is bigger and that it's a very diverse community, socioeconomic, racially, ethnically. So everyone is welcome to the table, and we encourage you next time to bring a friend with you. Partnerships, for sure. If you're an organization that is interested in partnering with the AMA, please contact me. And for those of you that are students and young professionals, we're absolutely looking to help you build your resume and have ways for you to do that in the future, but also feel free to reach out to us. We have more positions on the board that you can help us with, lots of opportunities to get involved. If you don't already follow us, please do on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Great ways to understand what is happening with the organization. In particular, our coming events. If you're not already a member, it is very, very affordable, $149 a year. Not only provides you with everything that we're doing locally, but gives you access to the National American Marketing Association. So for example, on November 10th, there's a webinar called 10 Common Webinar Mistakes and How to Avoid. Since we're all doing so many webinars these days, that should be really valuable. But that's what AMA National does. They have really interesting webinars on an ongoing basis. And they also have on-demand webinars that you can download. One that I saw this morning was how to infuse agility into your marketing strategy. So for only $149, you have access to all of the local chapter content, as well as the national content. In particular, I love the magazine that is sent out. I read that, cover to cover on a regular basis. There's templates, there's journals. You get discounts to the conferences, which are online right now, but there's still very good content. And of course, with all of us working from home, we could use some discounts on office supplies. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you a little sneak preview to the local coming events. In November, we are going to have an Ask Me Anything week-long event. So that board that you just saw, they are experts across all facets of marketing. And every day of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we are going to be available for you to ask us anything. So we, again, want to be sure that we are serving our local business community. In addition, in January, we're going to have a workshop on how to manage a successful influencers program. So please stay tuned for that. And in February, to recognize Black History Month, we are going to do a webinar regarding diversity and inclusion marketing, how to reach a diverse audience. So that's just a sneak preview of what we have coming. And like I said, please check out the membership at ama.org. We would love for you to become a member so that you can not only connect more successfully with us locally, but tap into all of those resources at a national level. All right, well, I am thrilled to introduce this very talented gentleman that is with us today. As I was reviewing his bio, I was kind of getting a kick out of some of the different stories. First and foremost, welcome back actually to Tom Martin. He is a former president of the American Marketing Association New Orleans chapter. So he has been in my position before and was very thankful for that. He's also, as you might have read, an author, an internationally recognized social selling speaker, and a contributor to Ad Age's Small Agency Diary. Tom started his current company, Converse Digital, in 2010, but this was after an already illustrious 20-year career in the advertising agency business. His focus really is to help people and organizations learn how to turn conversations into customers, which is so important. But how do you do that in today's COVID environment, which is what he's going to be talking about today. A little bit more about Tom. He published his first book in 2013 called The Invisible Sale. I'm sure it's available at your local Amazon online account. And he has a second book on the way, which is the topic we're going to be talking about. But apparently he's been so busy teaching how to sell greatly to everyone else that he hasn't quite gotten the book out there. But I'm sure he's going to chat a little bit more about that today. So stay tuned on that. He did work for a time with Peter Mayer, an agency we're probably all familiar with, a very large local advertising agency, and he helped them create their first business development program that generated over 35% growth in new billings in just 4 years. So a little testament to his experience in this space. Don't forget today to ask him about painless prospecting, because if you're in sales or account management, it can be painless at times. So we want to learn how to make it painless. Tom, as you can imagine, has been an active member of the New Orleans marketing community. He's a proud graduate of University of Texas at Austin with a BS in advertising. He's married and has 4 children, so he's clearly a very busy person. He enjoys reading, cycling, and an occasional round of golf. And during the chat today, be sure to ask him about Tyler Florence, something about an episode of Food 911, the Food Network. Seems like there's a story there. And lastly, before I hand it over to Tom, if you haven't been on his website, I recommend it. He's got lots of cool articles. A few that came to, that popped out to me was leveraging social media to grow tourist traffic to your destination. That's what we talked about last month, was marketing tourism in a COVID economy. There was also a great article about how to convince your boss that social media marketing is valuable. That is sometimes hard. And how do you overcome sales objections to close more deals? So like I said, Tom is an expert. He's full of resources, and I am so thrilled that he's here with us today. Tom, welcome and thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's good to be back. Now we'll see if I can actually work my own technology here to get my screen up. Let's see how we do here. Good, that's the one we want. And action, let's see. Perfect. Okay, well, first off, thanks for inviting me. This is a topic that's near and dear to my heart because it's how I built my company. We don't have a lot of clients here in New Orleans. Most of our clients, our partners, et cetera, are outside of New Orleans, outside of Louisiana. And so I've been doing virtual relationship building for a long time, since before it was actually required by COVID. And but you know, COVID has changed the game, and it is now our probably most requested topic in any of our sales training, webinars, or workshops, or coaching, or keynotes. And so you know, it's great to get an opportunity to share some of it with you. I only have around 20-ish minutes today, and I could spend hours talking about this, so I won't be able to go completely down the rabbit hole that we do like in our webinars and so forth. But what I wanted to do was pull out a couple of things. First, some of the theoretical aspects that I think if you can understand, you know, number one, it's going to lower your trepidation to having to build relationships in a virtual environment. But secondly, I think it's just going to help you understand, you know, how this really works. And then I do want to leave you with at least one really good tactic that, frankly, if it's the only thing you change about how you go about doing this in the future, you'll just be infinitely more efficient and effective and successful. So.
And Tom, if I could interrupt right as you're getting started, I did want to say to the audience out there, if you have a local business challenge, we invite you to share that with Tom today. He's going to present for about 20 minutes, but if there is someone that would like to share their sort of a current situation, we will get you on camera and have you talk a little bit about that so Tom can respond to it. And I'm going to go ahead and turn my camera off a little bit, Tom, so that you can kind of have the floor here. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and hopefully, if you have a challenge, I'll say something smart. It's been known to happen. All right, so let's. You know, I think the most important thing that you have to understand is while it is true that everything has changed, right? The reality is that nothing is really different. The way that you go about building relationships, the channels open to you, the opportunities, the techniques and tactics, yeah, that's all changed. There's a whole lot of things that we either can't do or we can kind of do, but not really. And so we've had to now learn some new ways to get around. But the truth of the matter is, whether you're building a relationship virtually or in the face-to-face world or some sort of blended approach, nothing's really different. The goal of what you're doing, whether you're selling yourself in a networking environment or whether you're selling something in a sales prospecting environment, and I'm probably going to jump back and forth between those two things, but don't get caught up in that. If you're more here worried about how do I network virtually, or if you're here more because you want to understand how to sell and prospect virtually, it's all the same stuff as in my world. So just if you hear me jump back and forth on those two words, don't pay too much attention to that. But regardless of what you're doing, your job, especially in those early days when you're trying to establish the beginning of a relationship, but I would argue it's also what allows you to maintain a relationship and strengthen it and grow it over time, et cetera, is you have to be of value. So you need to prove to that person you want to meet or build a relationship, whatever, that you're valuable enough that you can warrant an investment of their time. It's worth it to them to give you an audience, to give you their time, read your email, talk to you on the phone, maybe do a Zoom call, interact with you on social media, et cetera. And this factoid is really the thing that I think is causing most people, especially salespeople, really heartburn, and they're all getting clumped about during COVID, because if you think about all the sales come-ons that you get, or people trying to reach out and network with you on LinkedIn, et cetera, what you start to realize is that so many of the folks that are doing it really, if you look at how they're reaching out to you, you realize they don't really understand this point. They are not trying to present themselves as valuable. They are simply trying to get your attention so that they can engage you to conduct a transaction or something that benefits them. And so that lack of understanding is what's really caused them a problem. And the reason it's caused them a problem is because historically they could get around this by buying our attention, right? If you've ever had somebody offer to take you to lunch or buy you dinner or take you out to a ball game, or maybe they met up with you at a conference or a trade show, it's kind of trip, maybe fishing or hunting or something like that. That is a salesperson or someone trying to network with you. They are buying your attention because probably they don't know how to gain it otherwise. They don't know how to earn it. And I can't think of a conference that I've spoken at in the last 10 years that at least one night during the conference, somebody has bought my attention, right? They've invited me to come to dinner either individually or with a group of people. And that's what they're doing. They're trading me something of value, a meal, some drinks, et cetera, in exchange for me giving them my attention for a certain amount of time, giving them access, giving them an opportunity to have a conversation. And for a lot of salespeople who are actually really good salespeople, they're good at selling, getting that attention and getting that opportunity for attention, that's really all they need. They need to get over that hump, and then they're fine, right? They're in, they can talk to anybody. But we live in a virtual world now. And the difference is that we can't buy people's attention anymore. We're really limited. We now have to earn it, right? And we have to earn it because it's so easy for the people whose attention we're trying to get to simply just ignore us, right? So if you think about it, again, I'll go back to the conference or trade show or networking event. If somebody comes up to you and tries to engage you in a conversation, they try to get your attention. And even if they're not buying it, even if they're just legitimately trying to earn it, and you quickly figure out that there's not a lot of value coming back your direction, right? You figure out, like, I'm the value. What I can do for this person is the value. I'm not seeing much back the other direction. You're probably not just going to halt the conversation and walk away because your mom taught you to be a little bit, more respectful and polite than that. But if you think about your virtual world, you think nothing of doing that. You think nothing of just telling someone to go away. I mean, think about the last time you got a LinkedIn invite to connect, and so you did it, and boom, right away, you get the come on, right? You get the little message that they want to sell you something, or they can help your company do this, or blah, 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 blah. And how many of you have just said, sorry, click, unconnect, block, whatever, done. We don't think anything of doing it, right? It's socially acceptable, always has been in social media. So that's why it's imperative that we have to earn the right to have attention, right? And that doesn't ever stop, right? It's not just once you get the opportunity to open a conversation with somebody, it's how you continue to earn the right to have future conversations. And attention is really an interesting subject that you have to understand. So if you've been to any of those conferences or read any blog posts, I'm sure you've sat through a webinar or something recently where someone's talked about how the human attention span has shrunk. We now seemingly, I guess, goldfish now have a longer attention span than we do. And it's been said ad nauseum, and it cracks me up. And every time I see a speaker do that at a conference, I really just want to go and punch him in the throat, which is really an overreaction. But I just have such a visceral response to it because it's such poppycock. Human beings have not lost the ability to give focused attention. If they had, Nobody would be binging Netflix movies and shows. Nobody would be reading books. Nobody would be even listening to music because the average song's 2.5, 3 minutes long. Nobody would be registering for an AMA NOLA webinar. We as human beings absolutely have the ability to give you our undivided attention. We have the ability to give it to you. The problem is we just don't have the time to give it to you. And that's the second really big thing you have to understand. You are trying to insert yourself into someone's world, and their world's pretty much overloaded. There are very few of us who are just sitting around twiddling our thumbs. And everybody's in content overload, everybody's in Zoom meeting overload, everybody's in work overload. We just have so many things vying for our attention. And you're just one more thing, right? And so you've got to help me understand I can only pay attention to so many things. And as human beings, we've become very, very adept at really being diligent about what we are going to offer our attention to, and frankly, what we're not going to offer our attention to. And you've got to get into that first slot. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to show and demonstrate value? Because until you figure that out, I can show you all the tips and tricks and hacks and all this. I can show you all kinds of stuff. But if you don't fundamentally understand that point of creating value, and if you can't figure out how to create value and make it worthy of my attention, none of that's going to work. So that's the very first thing you have to do. And I know that probably doesn't feel very helpful in many ways because I can't teach you how to do that in 20 minutes, but you really have to figure out how to create value. And I will give you a technique that might help you with that. So for me, and those of us here at Converse Digital, the way you do this, the way you build these virtual, and I would argue physical relationships, the way you create this value, the way you earn attention is what we call Sell Greatly. And it's based on the 5 Ps. We all, it's a marketing organization. We all know the 4 Ps. We have the 5 Ps, right? So proximity, preparation, presence, patience, and preference. And again, we're not going to go through all 5 of them, but I wanted to pick out 2 of them that I think that if you can focus on these 2 and you can just do these 2 really well, you will immediately enhance your capability. You will become far more successful, and you will stand out in this virtual world. You will be able to show value. You will be able to garner that attention. So the first P is preparation. And this is the one I think especially salespeople are really, really bad at, mainly because unfortunately, we still by and large live in a quantity over quality world in the sales world, especially. It's a very transactional mindset versus a relationship mindset. And so salespeople don't take the time to really do the homework, to understand who am I going to talk to. If you take that same approach in the virtual world, you will fail. Because again, as I said, it's just too easy for me to just ignore you. I don't need to be politically correct or polite. It's a computer screen. I just don't accept you. I don't talk to you. I don't respond to your email. Maybe I even mark you spam, right? That's how we do it. So it's imperative that you get to know me a little bit. It's imperative that you, as doing your outreach and networking in sales, you never talk to a stranger. Okay, you should never talk to a stranger. 25 years ago when I got in this business, it was acceptable to talk to a stranger because it was hard to get information about people, right? If you didn't know somebody who could tell you about the person, or if they weren't maybe somebody who's somewhat public, it was really hard. Nowadays, it is super easy. Most people think that the value of social media is that these platforms give us the ability to pretty much touch anyone, anywhere, anytime at little to no cost. And while that's true, that's actually not their greatest value to us. Their greatest value, and I would argue always has been, is the ability to learn about other people. What people don't realize is how much information we're putting out there in the digital world when we participate in social media, when we allow web articles to be written about ourselves, when we conduct webinars for people, when we go on a podcast, whatever. And again, this works for people like me who are very much into digital and creating a digital presence, but it also works for people who are not. They don't even have to necessarily be overly digital. Regardless, there is just an enormous, it's mind-numbing how much unstructured data is floating around on the interwebs right now. And if in publicly available places, you don't need fancy software to get it. You just need to know how to go get it and what to look for and then what to do with it once you have it. And it's what we call social reconnaissance. And I can't take you through all the way how we do it, but I want to give you a couple of key steps that, again, if you just do these few things, you're going to be in a much better position to be successful in this virtual environment. So the first thing you're going to do is obviously figure out who you want to talk to, who you want to network, who you want to sell to. And then go look that person up on LinkedIn, okay? Always start with LinkedIn, okay? And here's why. Pretty much everybody has a LinkedIn profile. Right? It's almost like the de facto modern day resume. So even if they're not really active on LinkedIn, chances are they have a resume. These kids that are coming out of college nowadays, especially if they're in a business school, the placement offices are actually mandating in some cases that they have one. They're showing them, they're working with these kids to build their resume. So as you start to look at the next generation that's coming up through, people are going to call on for sales, et cetera, these people are going to have it. Second, it is the one platform you can be pretty sure it's going to have their real photo as their avatar. Their Facebook page, their Twitter might have some goofy GIF or whatever, but on LinkedIn, for the most part, they are going to have their photo. And that's important because down the way, having that photo can help you find information about them. And third, it's public. Google indexes it, right? You can go to pretty much anybody's LinkedIn page, whether you know them or not, whether you're connected or not, and you can get a treasure trove of information because it'll tell you who they are, where they live, where they work, where they've worked, what things they've done in their life, where they went to school, all kinds of stuff, right? And that's all, it's a great plethora of inputs that you can then use as search queries in this really cool tool you may have heard of called Google, right? And if you haven't heard of it, it's free. And I've yet to find a laptop, a phone, or a tablet device that can't run it if it's not inherently installed. But what you need to know about Google is that most of us know it's really powerful just to use that single little search bar. What you may not know is that if you take the time to learn some advanced search techniques, if you learn how to use Google's advanced filtering, if you learn how to do Boolean searches, there's some really powerful search strings and taxonomy that you can use. You can cut through that huge haystack of information that Google mines, and you can find those little needles that you need, right? Those little really important pieces of information that give you an edge over other people who are trying to sell or network with whoever you want to network with. You're going to get information that you can use to start conversations, right? Now, there's another good place to go for this kind of information that a lot of people overlook, and that's Facebook. And a lot of people overlook Facebook because they wrongly assume that if I'm not your friend, I can't really use it to learn anything about you, and that's not necessarily true. Even if your profile is closed, right? Only your friends can see it. What a lot of people don't realize is that Facebook is by default pushing a decent amount of really helpful information, frankly, into a public realm, unless you and I decide to crank that down in our security settings. And for many people, they haven't done that. And so you go to someone's Facebook page and you hit that about tab, and you can find out a lot of times, where do they work, where do they live, who are some of their family members, where have they lived and worked in the past, what are some life events. So a lot of times you can see their likes. So all of a sudden now you can understand their musical taste, television, what are their passions, right? What do they get excited about? You can, in some cases, even learn their political bent, which, let's face it, nowadays, that's kind of an important thing to know, right? Provided you want to have a good conversation versus a bad one. But what you're looking for here in all of this, whether you're in LinkedIn, whether you're in Facebook, whether you're doing Google searches, when the goal of a good social reconnaissance effort is twofold. First and foremost, you're looking for conversation starters. It's what I call a conversation catalyst. You're looking for those topical areas that you can use to engage in a initial as well as subsequent conversations that are just real. Right? They're just everyday conversations that you would have with folks that you've decided you might want to get to know better. And it's not around what you do or what you sell or what you can do for me or what I can do for you. It's human, right? You're going to just have a human conversation. And that's the key thing, because today's virtual selling, relationship building, it really requires you to move a little bit further upstream than where you might normally start. Again, because it's so easy to ignore you, and because it's so easy for everyone else to get to that individual and try to start their own conversation, you really need to start a little higher. You got to start that conversation with the person at a place that is more human, and that really your goal is to form a connection. Okay, you want to make a connection. You want that individual to see something in you that they see in themselves, something that creates a little common ground, something that gives them a reason to want to pay attention to you, to think maybe you're interesting or that you're worthy of some further exploration, etc. Because what you're trying to find is the things that you can really use as a basis to build a relationship. Because again, if you try to live in a transactional world, I would argue in the offline world, it's not as effective or efficient as a relationship-based world like Sell Greatly is. But most certainly in a virtual world, if you're kind of staying in that transactional world, I just don't think you're going to be very successful at this, because people sniff it out and they're just not really into it. But if you can build that relationship, now what happens is you've got a baseline where you can have continuous flow of new opportunities, whether that's to sell or network or do business together, et cetera. And that's really the goal. That has to be your goal, because that is your long-term, your strength. If you're just trying to get the deal, what's going to happen is you might still get the deal, don't get me wrong, but every time you go to get another deal, you're starting from ground zero. And that's really the thing here with the virtual stuff, is that you have the ability to build pretty strong relationships with people, even though you never meet them. And you can, because it's being done virtually, you can really build a lot more of those relationships and manage a lot more of them, just because it's easier. Now, the second thing that you look for in your social reconnaissance efforts is how can I create proximity? Okay, you want to have as much opportunity to demonstrate value to people as possible. And when you think about proximity, think about a taco truck. So you want to be a taco truck, right? A taco truck says, where are the people who I think want to buy tacos? It pulls up in front of them, it opens the doors, it sells its tacos, it finishes, it finds more people someplace else, does the same thing, rinse and repeat, right? And that's how the taco truck starts to form its relationship with prospective buyers, right? It's sort of taken the mountain to Muhammad instead of vice versa. So you want to be that taco truck. And the reason for that is that relationships are based on something called propinquity, okay? So propinquity is a scientific term. It's actually been studied for about the last 100 years in the social sciences realm. And it has been proven to be the #1 predictive value of the future formation of relationships between people. And it's sort of like proximity with a little twist. But basically, the idea of propinquity is that the greater the physical or psychological closeness, proximity of two people, and I would add to this virtual, the greater the proximity between two people, the greater chance or likelihood they're going to form a friendship, a romantic relationship, and again, I would add a business relationship or even a sale, if you will. The reason for that is because we as individuals need time to get to know other people, to trust them, to want to decide to do business with them, to buy from them, to network with them, etc. And so in the social reconnaissance, what you're trying to do, in addition to find the conversation catalyst, is you're trying to find where are the propinquity points by which you can start to come into contact. Where are those places that you could park your taco truck, right, and start to sell tacos? And that might be in the offline world, but if you just kind of take it down to our virtual world, certainly that's people looking for information on Google, so if they can find information about you or about what you sell. There are certainly places where people are looking to digital destinations, various websites. Can you get your brand's content there? Can you get your content there? Can you start sort of an asymmetrical conversation that way? Certainly social media, we all know how that works. But the idea is you want to map out, where are all the places I can potentially have a conversation with this person? And then use your conversational catalyst to begin to have those conversations. Because what the scientists have figured out is that we all pass through the same propinquity pathway. Now we're in these 4 stations, varying amounts of time, but we all go through the same 4 stations. You meet somebody, you run into them, you become aware of them, you know who they are, you might know 1 or 2 things about them, but that's about it, right? You meet them again, maybe you have another conversation, you know a few things, you learn a few things about them. Some you might like, some you might not. And so the next time you meet them, you have another conversation, and hopefully you learn some new things that you didn't already know. Again, some you're going to like, some you're not going to like. And the important thing here is that, and this is where advertising fails woefully, you're in this sort of no-like thing for a long time. And the key to this is each time you bump into them, whether it's a conversation or it's a content, they have to have the opportunity to learn something new that they didn't already know, because it's really about math. Each time they run into you or your content or your brand, they're going to learn new things about you. Some they're going to like, some they're not going to like. Eventually, they're going to hit a critical mass, or you hope they're going to hit a critical mass, of things they like that they're going to spin off out of this no-like circle into that buy, form a relationship, network, business relationship spot. And that's where they're going to stay provided you continue to provide value. So each time they run into you, you have to bring more value. You have to bring more things that they are going to care about, have different conversations that they're going to like. You've got to find more places that they can connect with you and your brand. And if they can find enough of them, then you're going to form a relationship, right? Then you're going to do business together, and you're going to sell things, you're going to buy things, you're going to network with one another. But the key to all of it, the key to every single bit of it, is you have to be valuable. Okay. If you want to build relationships today, if you want to build them tomorrow, during COVID, post-COVID, I really don't think it matters. It's not just a virtual thing. You have to want to build relationships, and you have to want to be valuable to people. You have to say, look, I warrant your attention, because once you get their attention and then keep it, the next thing is you're going to get their relationship, their business, their networking support, et cetera. And so what you want to do is leverage the power of the various virtual tools and channels that you have to constantly be providing value. Be that person who every time I meet you, every time I see you, every time I get an email from you, I think to myself, that's cool. I need to remember that. Wow, that's really valuable. I'm so glad that person's in my inbox. I needed to know that. That's what you need to do. And if you will, you'll be successful. Now, as I said, there's no way I could cover all this in 20 minutes. There's my Twitter, there's my email. Feel free, if we don't get to your question during the Q&A, I'll happily answer it. Or if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, email me and tell me, I'll put you on a list. And the next time we do a webinar or a class or something around this, I'll let you know. Or feel free to just play along on Twitter. I love when we actually do a thing here at Converse Digital called Ask Tom, hashtag Ask Tom. So you can send your question up, hashtag it, it'll get into our system, and we pick the most fun ones, and we end up answering them on Twitter and Instagram and so forth. So with that, thank you for your time. Let's do some Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. That was really great. And you've also kind of left us hanging a little bit. So I'm sure, first and foremost, if the audience wants to learn about your other Ps, the other 3 Ps, I believe there were 5, what's the best way they can learn?
Like I said, email me. I'll put you on a list for the next webinar we do, or just go to our website. It's all, there are various times. And I think we might even have a few webinars already loaded up, either on all or some of them. And knock yourself out. There's just a lot more detail you can go in, but just unfortunately not in 20.
So I personally have an immediate question about the proximity. I loved your analogy with the taco truck, and kind of this circle of no like. What are some examples, if you wouldn't mind giving a couple of concrete examples, again, because of COVID, and I might not run into you in the coffee shop, or I might not run into you in the restaurant. So what are some examples of how I can be kind of adding value? What are ways where I can get my brand out there that you might run into digitally?
Well, I think 2 of the easiest things to do is one, just pay attention to your social media feeds. You will see, especially if you're in private groups. I'm a big fan of private groups, not so much on LinkedIn, because those got kind of ruined years ago and they're trying to relaunch them, but they just, I don't know, they haven't quite reached their luster yet. But on Facebook, there's a ton of great groups, personal and professional. Get in there and pay attention, and because people will ask questions, and this could be helpful. I call them embassies. If you read the book, I talk about outposts and embassies. And embassies are places where you're just going to show up and be a good human being. Yeah. And that's great, because then people see you and go, oh, wow, thank you. I appreciate that. You gave me some free information. Right. The other thing I'm a huge fan of, it's actually my probably most successful tool, is the thought you'd find this interesting email. I have, all of my prospects in my database and my CRM are tagged by category or marketing, sales need, etc. And if I find a really good article or piece of research, or just, I don't know, whatever, I'll send it off. I'll just fire up a quick email. Hey, thought you'd find this interesting. Blah, 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 blah. And I'll do a mass email merge, and they'll each get their own personalized version. And I've never had anybody opt out. Never had anybody upset that I sent it to them. And I've had a lot of people come back and say, man, thank you. I actually am having this problem right now. I really appreciate that. And so that's, again, it's just about, and the nice thing about it is I can email that to 500 people. Yeah. If I was to try to do that via phone or face-to-face, I could do 5. So
I think it's so thoughtful. I've had people do that with me. They send me an article, was just thinking about you, just read about this, wanted to pass it along. And it really goes a long way. And it's so sort of genuine, I think, when they, someone makes the effort to do that.
yeah.
I think the other thing too is sort of like brand building and being consistent about brand building. I'll give Wonder Woman as an example because I've worked virtually for 20 years, and for a good chunk of it, Wonder Woman's been sitting on my shoulder. And I'm a gender equity champion. I've worked in the women's leadership space for many years. So whenever someone comes across something Wonder Woman, it tends to come my way. But it says something about sort of the consistency of brand. Another one is like, my husband's a huge Bruce Springsteen fan, and so you build up these things that people know about you, and it's a way for them to connect with you.
Absolutely. Mine's bourbon, which I don't know what that says. You're Wonder Woman and I'm bourbon. That's probably not good. But, people who follow me or have some semblance of who I am know that I'm a big fan of bourbon. And so if somebody sees a new bourbon, that's always great, because somebody's always wanting to talk about liquor.
Right.
But yeah, it's really, I think it's easy. It's something I started doing again. I used to do when I was much younger, is call people on their birthday.
Right. Oh, I love
Facebook
that.
tells you their birthday. LinkedIn tells you their birthday.
Right.
And just call them. I promise you will be, other than their mom, potentially the only person that will call them, because everybody's just going to tag them on their Facebook page or LinkedIn or whatever, and it stands out and people love it, and it's also fun. It's once a year you get to catch up with people, but again, it's a virtual relationship building tool. It's easy. It's and sometimes you end up getting a piece of business out of it, because you find out that, oh man, you know what? I'm so glad you called. Actually, we're doing XYZ at our company. You do that, don't you? And you're like, oh yeah, I do. So that's the thing is how can you continually touch, use a CRM to remind yourself to touch,
right?
Because that's the other big thing. You blink your eyes and a week goes by, or 2 weeks go by, or a month goes by, and you just realize, oh crap, I haven't talked to this person in a month.
Right. I think
so
that's
tools
key,
like that can be helpful.
and scheduling time every day to do that outreach. I do have a few questions coming in. So the first one is, the question is, I have a client who wants to market his service specifically and directly to CEOs and presidents of companies, of American companies who perform business abroad. How do you market something that tight yet so broad? I'll let you. I'm thinking research, but you go for it.
I'm thinking that's got a lot of social reconnaissance on the front end of that. Because that's probably a pretty tight marketplace, but there's also probably some similarities. Birds of a feather, I'm a big believer in, and so your research, your social reconnaissance would potentially find you some places you might not think of. I remember years ago we did some work for an insurance company. And they were targeting doctors, and they wanted to figure out, can we use digital and virtual to target doctors? And we actually partnered with a trade organization and did some research, because the trade organization wanted to do some research on its membership. We knew how to do virtual research and online research. We had the tools. They didn't. They had a list of people we wanted to talk to. We didn't. And we created a win-win, and we did a joint little research study, and we inserted some stuff in there for ourselves. And one of the things we inserted was, do you use any of these platforms? And it was Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. There were a handful of closed chat room type places that are medically oriented. And it was mind-blowing, the information we got back, and completely opened their eyes to a couple of channels that we had no idea were viable channels. So that's what I would say. If you can find a way to do some primary research, there's got to be a trade organization someplace that those people are all part of. And even if you don't get the CEO, I would assume that the presidents, the VPs, they're all kind of looking at the same stuff. And so you'll at least get a place to figure out like where maybe you could start. Set up an embassy and be a good person.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. With Forte, the organization I was with before, we were always trying to reach who's the decision maker, and it's a matter of my strategy was how many different people can you get to talk about you to that decision maker. So I liked your phrase there, the birds of a feather. It's what are the contacts around your target person that you can also begin to build a relationship with.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Tom. A couple more here. One of our attendees has asked this question. A lot of businesses rely on a higher quantity of leads to make conversions. Sorry, a lot of businesses rely on a higher quantity of leads to make conversions, which usually leads to reaching out to strangers. Would you recommend reaching out to smaller groups to establish more personal relationships?
I would recommend and do recommend that those companies step back for a second and ask themselves, why do they have to reach out to so many people?
Right.
To create those few conversations. And the answer is because their conversion rate sucks.
Yeah.
And so then ask themselves, well, why does your conversion rate suck? Well, because you're reaching out to a lot of people you don't know. And so you're wasting a lot of effort because they're not really prospects, true prospects. So I would say they should go back to the drawing board, do better research, do better, higher quality outreach to a smaller number of people. And, instead of getting a 5 or 15, or if you're lucky, a 20% conversion rate, get 40, 50, 60, 80.
Right.
You're going to get the same revenue on the back end, right? Because that's what it's all, deal flow. You're just going to close 5 out of every 10 instead of 1 out of every 10, which is going to make your marketing spend more efficient. It's going to make your salespeople a hell of a lot happier, because nothing is worse than working a lead and it doesn't happen, doesn't go anywhere, because it's opportunity cost. It's non-inventoriable time. So as a salesperson, you lose that time and opportunity to make money off of it. It's a better process to go through. But I mean, you're fighting an uphill battle because that quantity over quality, Glengarry, Glenn Ross, always be closing mindset's been around a long time. It's very installed.
It has been around a long time, but I agree with you that the trend has been changing even on the direct marketing side, right? Where we used to think it was so important to have the biggest database around. The more numbers you had in your database, the better. And then your open rates were just going down, down, down. Whereas now I feel like the trend has really shifted to having that quality audience in terms of those that are engaged with you versus all of those people that are in the database but not opening your emails. And I think the same applies in this case, where spend the time on that sort of target audience that is sort of the right prospect, and dig in there. And that's also just a better use of time, right?
Yeah, we did in the book. There's a case study, something I led a team that did a long time ago. It was a behavioral email case study, and our client had about 1,600 names in her database and didn't really know squat about them. But she was one person, so she kind of needed, her thing was, I need to know that the person I'm calling wants to talk to me before I call. And if you can tell me what they want to talk about, that'd be really cool too. And that was the marketing challenge. We said, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. Let's figure this out. So we did this whole behavioral email thing, and we took her 1,600 names and we put it through this big process of email and all this other stuff. And then we handed her back a list and said about 250 some odd people. And we said, here's, I think it was 15 or 16 people. These folks are hot to trot. They're all very interested. Here's what they're interested in, and call this person at the top first because they are ready to buy now. She took that, and then here's another 250. Once you run out of these people, go here. Don't even look at these other people. Just leave them for now. Don't do anything with them. She ended up calling the person we told her to call. Not only was he interested, he became a client within 90 days, and their sales cycle was like usually 120. And she ended up seating, I think, an additional 15 appointments in the first 30 days, and the whole campaign and ROI'd out in the first 125 or 130 days. And again, this is a long sales cycle type of product, all because instead of dialing for dollars, she was, like, as you were saying, she was calling people she was pretty sure were interested. They were pretty well qualified. She knew what to talk about. She knew how to get into the conversation. and she knew what kind of material she was going to need in the follow-up. And that's the trick, right? I don't want to talk to you if you don't really want to do, if you don't already think you kind of maybe want to do business together.
Right.
I mean, this is rude, but I don't really want to talk to you because that's wasted time. And that's the trick. And that's what virtual does really well, I think. You can talk to so many more people at a lighter level in social media and in virtual, and then you can be kind of gauging to see, okay, wait, you really seem serious. So I'm going to go dive in a little bit more with you. I'm going to invest a little bit more in you, until which point you seem to not have interest. And that's really the power of it. But again, you have to lead with value. You have to say, you're going to give me your attention. I'm going to give you value. And that value is going to be a unidirectional value. I'm giving you value. I don't necessarily get anything out of this other than your attention and the opportunity to have a conversation with you. That's 100%.
It. All right, I'm going to get in a few more quick questions before we wrap up. Jack, thank you for submitting this question. Which CRM does Tom use for this?
Well, we actually are changing our CRM. We were using Nimble because it's super lightweight, inexpensive, web-based, easy. And I like it. It's great. But in order to do some of the automation and get some of the back-end information off your website, so it doesn't do any of that. You have to connect it to other tools, and it's like, Band-Aids and duct tape. So we are switching to a product called sharpspring.com. It is a CRM, sales automation, marketing automation, all-in-one tool. It's super powerful, super cool. We're in the process of, we're having to clean all of our data and make sure, because that first import has to be clean. But it's a fantastic tool, and it's phenomenal. It's super powerful. It's priced right. It's not ridiculous. A small company can use it, all the way up to an enterprise class client can use it. Really, really cool.
Excellent. Thank you for that. I'm sure SharpSpring will be happy to hear that recommendation. We've got two other quick questions.
Yeah, tell them I sent you so they know I did that.
I know, right? Hey, that's what it's all about, right? Do you ever worry about giving customers or competition too much information and helping your competitors? Do you ever worry about giving customers too much information and helping your competitors?
No. For two reasons. As a friend of mine, Chris Brogan says, when asked that same question, he doesn't care because by the time you start doing what he's taught you how to do, he's on to the next thing, bitches. That's like his catch deal. And he's right. Stop the mic. Like, you're behind. I'm already over here.
Right.
I'm over here doing this next cool thing.
Yeah, I've already.
But the other reason is, you mentioned the Tyler Florence thing. I'm a huge cook. I love to cook. I can, and I'm not half bad at it. And so people will ask me for recipes, and I'll give them the recipe, right? And they'll cook it, and then they'll be like, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same as yours. It wasn't as good. Duh. Yeah. Because it's like marketing, in sales and all of it. Like, I can give you the recipe, but what makes one person a cook and one person a chef isn't the recipe. It's this innate talent, or it's the little extra thing that you do that doesn't find its way into the recipe. And I don't think we ever give, the closest I've ever gotten to giving everybody the recipe was the book. It was very, very prescriptive. But even that, there was stuff that we just do. And there's just stuff you don't even think. It's just inherent. It's how you do it. So I don't ever get too worried about that. I just figure that by the time you figure out how to do it, I'll find something better to do.
Yeah. That would have been a great closer, except I have one more question. And I agree with you. It's your special sauce that you're adding, which is making it great. In the virtual world, last question here, in the virtual world, are there any alternatives for connecting with potential consumers that you can't find on social media?
Say that again.
So in the virtual world, are there any alternatives for connecting with consumers? So you can't find someone on social media. I've run into that before, where I've tried them on LinkedIn. They don't have a LinkedIn profile, and you go to Facebook and there's not much there. You do have a lot of people out there who don't want the social media because, you know, they're worried from a privacy perspective.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is in the social reconnaissance space, when we do that, and the reason we use Google is you can go outside of obviously social media, right? It's searching anything digital. And there, your best chance is to find their associates, their friends, their family, their coworkers, whatever. And hopefully some of those folks will be on social media or digitally active. And that will then help you find information about that individual, which, you know, we have one example we use in our social recon decks, a guy at UPS. There was some VP of something. And he really wasn't in social. I mean, he did have a LinkedIn, but that was it. You know, he really wasn't in social. But he was in some program that is designed by UPS to help people in the military transition into working at UPS. And the UPS handle had posted something on like Instagram or something, and it was this guy.
Yeah.
And the only reason we knew it was the same guy was, again, this is why it's so important to get LinkedIn, because he had his real picture on LinkedIn. And of course, he had his real picture on this post because it was a picture of him in a helicopter about to do a parachute jump. And we could look at the two and go, that's the same guy. And then from there, we could start to then, you know, okay, well, where has he worked? Who does he know? And you can kind of, like you were saying, you can ladder up, you can surround them with other people who can then introduce you to that person. So I think it's darn near impossible to be invisible today. Unless you're just in a cave somewhere under a rock. It is somewhere, somehow, somebody has put you on to the digital webs.
And if anything, I think it's also sending a message to you about that person that maybe your approach needs to be slightly different. If they're really trying to sort of avoid social media, and you have to be more of a sleuth, if you will, to, you know, research their company or you know, whatever it is that surrounds this individual, then maybe the personal email or a handwritten note, or I don't know, you might want to just adjust your approach too, because they're really protecting their privacy.
Absolutely. And if you can successfully do it, you're going to be in a far less competitive environment, because you're going to be in a channel, like you said, written note or email or whatever, that's probably not very populated, because most people aren't going to do that work, because they're in that quantity versus quality mindset. So they're going to be, it's not really a prospect. Whoop, off we go. Okay.
Yeah. It's a test. Well, thank you so much. I'm going to get back to my little screen share here and be sure that everyone knows where to follow us so that they can continue tracking what the next event is. But Tom, I can't thank you enough. I learned a ton today, and I'm sure our audience did as well. So again, thank you, and stay safe in the storm that is about to approach in the next few hours.
Yeah, I think we slid this in right under the wire.
You know, hurricane, election, COVID, it's all good.
It's all good.
All good. Thanks, Tom. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Have a fantastic day.